I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
In the late 2000s, I remember my peers didn't understand how I could have a mum who was white. They said, "Are you sure? I don't believe you. Aren't you too black to be related to her?"
I grew up in the 70s and 80s in London, and there was only one black girl in the class, and everybody always wanted to touch her hair and to feel it, and used to call it spongy. And I now look back and I think that really wasn't right.
I remember in the early 90s, my friend who was black and I would often be spat at by the children in school. What was worse is that they would come to our doorstep to spit at our mums. At university in the early 2000s, if I was with a black person, the police would often stop our car. I was never stopped when with an Indian or white person. More recently, I've worked with black teachers where parents have complained because they don't want their child to be with the scary teacher. It's time for those parents to be educated.
Mm-hmm. They have no food, no water.
I went to school in the 1970s and 80s, and I saw that the only black kid in the class got called racist names. I'm pleased to say though, he joined the police force after leaving school, and he went on to become Chief Inspector of the West Midlands Police.
Some time ago, I was in front of a poster looking to the band, a picture of the band I like a lot, which is Earth, Wind and Fire. There was a person with me, and that person turned to me and told me, "What a shame. That is one of the things that black people do well, only that, music." That was really bad. I felt very bad, not only because I am of black descent myself, but also because it's wrong, and I really, really hurt.
I grew up in the 2000s, and I remember when Barack Obama ran for president in America, people demanded that he show his passport because they believed that a black man with a name like Barack Obama couldn't possibly be an American citizen, and he couldn't possibly be qualified to be the president of the United States.
And the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
I grew up in the 80s. And I remember watching American football games with my father and hearing him shout racist abuse at the television every time a play didn't go the way that he wanted. He had taught us that these words weren't okay to use, but for some reason it was all right for him to use them when he was angry at the television. And we never watched basketball. That's because he thought it was a black person's game.
Hi there, I just wanted to share my experience with you. It's a sad reality, really. My dad was white and my mum came here from Jamaica in the 1960s. I clearly remember growing up in a predominantly white community. Initially, many appeared friendly until I told them about my mum's origins. Some doubted my words and others made fun out of me or were racially abusive. We found strength in our church, and this negativity made us appreciate the nicer people around us more. When we visited relatives in other parts of London, we felt much more comfortable.
Land of the Pilgrim's tribe. From every mountain.
I grew up in the 1970s, and at my primary school there was a boy, Peter Darling, I remember his name, who was a real bully, and he wore steel-capped Dr. Martin boots, affiliated with the National Front, and he would go around and beat up any non-white pupils, and particularly black boys in the playground. It was a really horrible, racist and scary place for those boys.
I remember in the 90s when my sister was told to break up with a boy just because he was black and not white.
Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi.
During my childhood, I grew up in a monoculture. As an adolescent, I grew up in a society where there was little integration. Thus, ignorance often prevailed. Now, my family is multiracial. Times are changing for the better.
Did you know that it was just 62 years ago since we had the last human zoo? Just like you would go to a zoo and view your favourite animal, whether that's a monkey, a lion, a hippo, a giraffe. This is what they used to do to black people. They would put them in enclosures and people would come and throw food at them and look at them and observe them. They've had their freedom taken away. They had their families ripped apart. All because of the colour of their skin. Growing up in the UK as a black person is knowing that you're going to be stopped if you drive past a police van. Not because you've done anything wrong, not because you've broken the law, but because you're black. Growing up in the UK is knowing that you always have to play down your blackness because people might feel uncomfortable. It's knowing that when you apply for a job position or a school position or anything else, you need to follow certain criteria and you will have to work twice as hard as everybody else to prove yourself. Being black in the UK is being worried when your brother, your dad, your nephew leave the house because they could be racially profiled and they could be at the other end of police brutality. We understand that all lives matter. Nobody's saying that they don't. But for over 400 years, black lives have not mattered. This Black Lives Movement is not about George Floyd. It's about the oppression that black people have lived under for over 400 years. And whilst we say that all other causes are valid and they're so important, we're asking for this moment in time for you to allow black lives to matter, because black lives are in desperate danger. And so we need, for all lives to matter, we need black lives to matter, because until black lives matter, all lives cannot matter.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are